So, art of the possible. The description hopefully gave you some insight about what we're going to cover today. But this is what we're trying to address fundamentally. So it's this question: as IT professionals and as digital trainers, we tend to go out there and we tend to just ask people what they want training in, which I realize is not really the best approach to it. So the reason we run this session is to show those possibilities and some of the things that people could do within the apps. We won't necessarily show you how to do everything, but we will give you some inspiration, some insight, and just hopefully start waking up those conversations around some of those cool tools that you can use and some of the ways you can get the best out of this Office 365 environment. And we've updated the slides a little bit recently since we've moved from obviously very much remote learning back to the classrooms now. So it's trying to reflect some of those changes that we've gone through. So this is the wealth of what we're going to try and cover today. As I say, we'll be fast paced and we'll try not to hurt your minds too much. So we're going to have a look at the Microsoft Educator community and then a brief tour of Office 365 generally, and then looking at some of the key apps. So we're going to look at OneNote, OneDrive, Office Lens, and then we're going to take a look at Immersive Reader, and also in that same section, we'll take a look at the translation tool as well. In addition to which then PowerPoint, Sway, Microsoft Forms, and then we're going to see it in action. So we're going to round up everything we've learned already and go through a little bit of an interactive demo then. And then it's over to you guys. We'll open up for questions if you have anything for us. So let's jump right in. We're going to take a look first at the Microsoft Educator community. Now, we mentioned this one as it is the backbone and framework to a lot of our training that we do here at the college. We are a showcase college and we are striving to bring all of our staff members up to a level of digital citizenship. Now, particularly for the teachers, if you haven't already found your way into this space already, the Microsoft Educator community is a really, really good resource for lots of targeted CPD sessions. So they're normally about an hour apiece. They do attract badges, they do attract points in the community, so it does make it a little bit competitive amongst all of you, and it is quite a great thing to see sort of staff members scrabbling to see who can get the most points in this as well. So that's kind of the platform, but the content is really very rich, it's very engaging, and it is a great way to pick up new skills around everything in Office 365 and all of these kind of digital approaches. So as I say, for us, it forms quite a big part of our delivery. It's also something that we can train on. So the training you're attending today will attract some Microsoft points as well. So we'll share a code with you at the end of the session, and you can use that to start your journey towards becoming an MIE effectively. So as we progress through that, you'll earn badges going through this and hopefully pick up some great skills as well. So if you haven't already found your way to this platform, I really do strongly recommend it. And I think it is something that your teams and staff members and yourself will really benefit from. Now, just to explain the outline of that as well, the MIE that I mentioned, so this is the Certified Microsoft Innovative Educator. This is kind of one of the badges you get for acquiring 1,000 points in the community. And this opens up some great opportunities for you to engage with Microsoft and to join in their kind of community, the interactivity, the forums and the teams to be able to ask questions and get support. So it does really open up some great opportunities. And also for those of you thinking you might want to become a showcase school or showcase college yourselves, it starts to open up that pathway for you. So that's the MIE community. As I said, we will share out a badge with you towards the end of the session, which you can use to claim some points, and then sort of hopefully take on your own journey through that program. Okay, so we're going to jump on to the next part now, which is around Office 365. So I don't know if you're all using this, please feel free to put thumbs up and react and give us some commentary in the chat as we go along if there's anything that's sounds familiar or you're using or you have experience of. And I want to just break down what Office is kind of full of for you, so the key apps that you have access to. So I look at this in kind of three areas. There's the self-management stuff, there's the productivity stuff, and then there's the collaboration stuff and the tools in there. I'm not going to go through each of these individually with you, but you should hopefully start to see some of those icons and familiar be familiar with what they are, but we will cover off a few of those today as we go through. Additionally, it's worth me mentioning the things that we aren't going to cover today. We have got some other sessions on as well, so you can join in any of the sessions listed on screen. There's lots of them up on our YouTube channel. There's lots of them through the EdTech community as well. So do have a look through those. We've recorded all of them, and if you want to engage them, then please do, and please take advantage of them. But for today, folks, we're going to cover the ones I pointed to on screen. Okay, so we're going to take a look at OneNote and Office Lens in the self-management side of things. We're going to take a look at OneDrive, Word, PowerPoint in the productivity aspects, and also then from a collaborative point of view, starting to use things like Microsoft Sway and, of course, Microsoft Forms. And as a starting point, if I break it down into very simple terms, these are probably the 4 key things that I hope you take away from today. These are probably the 4 key apps that I think are really important to get involved with, and they do start to unlock everything else for you in the Office 365 platform. And the first one is OneDrive. So if anything else, when you're starting your progression into Office 365, if you're not there already, then I really would recommend that you make OneDrive your starting point. It really does underpin a lot of what's in the Office 365 side of things, and I think it's really important, therefore, to make that your priority to upload and bring your files into OneDrive. And what we've noticed is some of the challenges this starts to unlock or starts to address are those issues where people have PCs crashing and they lose all of their work. Where they have situations where either they or their students have left their memory stick at home. I'm pretty sure everyone's heard that. Perhaps again, thumbs up if you could tell me if you've seen this and you've had this kind of situation before amongst you. There we go. We've got a few of you. Yeah, I think we've all experienced this. And then throughout many different levels of education as well, there's the excuse we get from our students where I couldn't have my homework in because I've lost it, my dog's eaten it, it's in the washing machine, all sorts of different excuses. Well, you don't really have those with OneDrive anymore, and that's one of the beauties of it. So again, out of interest, thumbs up. How many of you are still using memory sticks? Okay, so we've got a few of you thumbs upping there on that one. This is one of the great things about OneDrive is that you can migrate away from that and move away from that process. I have myself, and it's great to see a lot of people doing that. Of course, you don't lose your memory sticks if you're storing those items in OneDrive in particular. So, folks, these are the kind of things you can do. If you are familiar with this, I'm sorry we're covering old grounds, but some of you who are new to this platform, it's hopefully gives you a bit of insight. So the great thing about OneDrive is it means that you've got all of your files everywhere, anywhere you go at any time of day. You don't have to wait until you've got access to your college accounts. You don't have to be logged onto a PC in your school or college. It is secure. It's backed up. You can access your files offline, and you can even go back to a recycle bin as well. So there's a lot of great things there around it, in addition to the fact that you've got a version history against every single document you create. So this idea of losing things and overwriting things now has pretty much gone out the window, because you can always go back to a previous version you've created. And within that, you've got an awful lot of storage you can use. So OneDrive itself gives you about 1 terabyte of space, which if you fill it, I'm going to be quite impressed. Your files save automatically. And as we said, they're shareable from anywhere at any time, and you've got the version control. And of course, that all important bit at the end, it is really difficult to tumble dry. So you don't have that loss of work that you might have from things like flash drives. So our first lesson of today is OneDrive. If you're not using it, do start to migrate yourself towards that, because you'll get a lot more benefit from everything else. Next on my list then, folks, is OneNote. And again, this is one that some people have dabbled with, but never really jumped into too heavily. But one of the key things with OneNote in particular, or some of the challenges that it can solve for us and for our students, are around these kind of things. So the situation of losing notebooks, again, like your homework, is great to allow collaborating on ideas, but when you're in meetings, for instance, those old flip charts, those old flip boards, the handwritten notes that we're doing in our lessons, we can't actually take those with us so easily. So doing them in OneNote and collaborating in this way allows you to stay on top of those kind of things. And of course, some of the other challenges that you'll face are really around this kind of thing. How many of us in our offices have binders and binders of paperwork, have filing cabinets full of paperwork that could have been scanned or digitized? Maybe we're carrying notebooks around with us wherever we go, or perhaps we're carrying multiple notebooks in our bags. Now, I think from a student point of view as well, if they're carrying lots and lots of paperwork to and from their lessons, could that be done in a better way? I would say yes. I would say actually yes, OneNote is probably that way to do it. And it's a really great way of converting your paper files into digital organized materials. So you can go from your notebook really easily to something more like this on the right, where you then have your run through of each of those, each of your notebooks on the far left-hand side here. The middle section is basically your tabs. If you think of them in terms of a lever arch file, you've got your list of tabs or sections. And then on the right-hand side of the navigation aspect in the middle there, you can see these are all the pages. So they're the individual sheets of paper in your notebook. So you can see it's quite easy to contain some very complex structure within a notebook. And of course, unlike a paper notebook, you can drag and drop these things, you can move them around, you can change them, and you can share them out with your colleagues as well. So that's quite a useful thing to have.
From where? Hi.
Bear with me a second. Sorry, folks. If I could ask if you're happy to stay off microphone just for the time being, if you're not already, and we will open up to sort of chat or discussion at key points as well. So yeah, in terms of OneNote, there is an app for it as well, which is really, really powerful. And some of the things you can do with OneNote, if you're not aware of them, are the ability to create to-do lists, to perhaps be able to split down your course into multiple pages or units, and use inking tools as well, so you can draw and highlight your notes out. I've tended to handwrite a lot of my notes in the past, and I know students also use this as a doodle pad in some sorts, or a method of being more creative, maybe designing clothing or designing their sort of next artwork piece. So there's lots of great opportunity to use that, keep it all in one place. Other things, of course, you can use it to capture photos, to share your content out as PDFs. You can even use rich media like video and audio in here as well. So you can use it to capture voice notes. And this is something that we've used quite strongly with our SEND students, for them to be able to sort of note down what they're thinking in a quick recording rather than having to write things up. And additionally, you can also use voice dictation as well to transcribe. Again, that's really useful in the SEND environment where students perhaps don't have the coordination, but they want to use a device, or where you're sort of not able to type at that time, but you want to sort of jot down your notes. And the reverse of that is true, to maybe have your notes read back to you in terms of revision. So there's some great ways of using it there. And in terms of creating a notebook, I'll just mention this quickly. Obviously, you can scan back through this slide later on if you do rewatch any of what we've gone through, but you simply open OneNote, click to create a new notebook, save it into your OneDrive, which is obviously the important part here. And then you just create your sections to organize your work and add the pages as necessary. So really simple, really easy to use. As I say, if we're looking at inking as well, maybe the desktop app, you can start to bring in all those rich lesson plans and lesson media as well. So I'm just covering OneNote as a core app for you at the moment. The extension you could look at is OneNote Class Notebook, and that allows you to share content out really easily with your students as well. And we will sort of cover that in future sessions as well. So a quick roundup of OneNote. Really, it's about a quick way of taking notes. It's a very easy way to go paperless. It's a really rich tool to have for revision purposes. As I say, you can drop rich media into there, so you can throw in YouTube videos alongside text, alongside maybe pictures you've taken of presentations. So it's really powerful in terms of what you can do with it. You can be really creative, so you can use it for concepts and designs. I tend to do that quite a lot as well, with maybe building layouts or room layouts and that kind of thing. And of course, you can share it, so you can collaborate with people. So if you're not using OneNote, I would recommend you have a look, download the app, have a play for yourselves, and see how you get on. Okay, now the next one that I want to go through is Office Lens. And this ties with OneNote really, really closely. And this is about capturing things really simply. If you've got paper documents or you've got a textbook or something like that you want to sort of bring the content out into your OneNote, and indeed for students to do this as well, then you can download the app called Office Lens, which allows you to do that. What it will do, as you can see on screen there, I've got a picture of a document. It will effectively straighten that document up. It will remove any kind of glare that's there and try and make it more readable. And then you can convert it and store it into wherever you want to go. So whether it's into your OneNote or maybe storing it as a picture or even convert it to a PDF. Now, the challenges that kind of addresses are where you have maybe students spending a lot of time copying down your presentations. So if they're sat writing down everything you've written up on screen already, verbatim, so they're literally scrolling through, and your presentation is then slowing down to the really the slowest paced writer within that class. You don't have to do that anymore, because they can use Office Lens to capture what you've got on screen, capture what you're showing up on the presentation, and make their own notes in OneNote later. Also, for maybe apprentices or work-based learners, you may have this situation where you don't have a scanner at work or you don't have a scanner at home to be able to bring content in. Particularly during lockdown, this has been quite useful as well, is that you can digitize that content really quickly, including multiple page stuff as well, folks. So you can do it with multiple pages, all into the same document. And the other one I've seen used as well is where people have actually lost the digital version of their file. Maybe they lost it on a flash drive because they weren't using OneDrive, and they've lost that and they want to get it back. So you can use it to scan something in and then turn it back into a completely editable document again. So if you haven't already, Office Lens is one of those really great tools to go and pick up and put on your phones. It will work with text, with whiteboards, with photos, and it is very good at removing glare on those kind of things as well. So really powerful one to have a look at. And as I say, it does tie in with OneNote as well. So you'll see here, as I'm going through and creating a file, I can tick the boxes for where I'd like that file to go. And then I'm prompted, which notebook do I want it to go into? Or if I've saved it as a Word document, for instance, where do I want to save that Word document? So some really great stuff there. As I say, I do recommend downloading Office Lens. Okay, I did promise again fast-paced, so here we go. We're going to have a look at Immersive Reader next and some of those accessibility tools. So quick hands up from everyone. How many of you have used or have seen Immersive Reader before? Is this something that's familiar, you've heard of, you've seen? Okay, actually not very many of you, so just two, three of you perhaps. So this one is a really, really powerful tool, and it's one that allows you to empower your students to take control for themselves. So if you've never seen it, I'm going to try and cover it in a demo in a bit as well as we get to that point. But we'll show you some of what it can do over the next few slides. Fundamentally, this basically takes a normal standard document and allows you to strip out all of the formatting. It's really good for those with additional needs. It's really good for anyone who has dyslexia and obviously has difficulty reading from screen or needs to change the background colors. But the great thing is that it empowers your learners or yourselves, if you need to use it yourselves, without having to ask for any extra help from anyone. So it completely removes that embarrassment piece from the classroom, which I think is really, really powerful. So as we look through that, these are some of the kind of challenges that exist in teaching that this product can solve. So this is where maybe I spend ages as a teacher translating documents into different languages. Maybe I've got multilingual classes, or maybe I'm teaching a language itself, and that translation piece can be time consuming. Also, maybe I have to make alternate formats available. So again, slightly embarrassing, but where you're having to print things out on different colored paper, or if you're using that approach to create resources to accommodate sort of needs, it's obviously extra work for you as teachers, but it's also something that highlights the situation that students find themselves in. And I've had students who get upset by this, and quite understandably as well. Also, where you have perhaps English not being their first language, Immersive Reader allows you to translate languages as well, which is a really powerful part of it. So moving on from that, then we have Immersive Read. I'm just going to show you a quick video to give an insight about how powerful this really can be. So hopefully this plays okay. So that's a really short insight into it, and it does it a little bit of justice. It's a really touching story to see that it does engage people who would have otherwise turned off from learning, from education. But to actually see it in use as well is something quite spectacular. It is a very powerful product, and as I say, it's that empowerment piece that I think is really important here. And the great thing is it's free and it's built into all of the Office apps. So all of the Office apps, particularly the ones that when you're using them from the web, it's built into there. Under the View tab, you'll have View and Immersive Reader. So in a Word document or a Sway or even a PowerPoint now, you'll have the Immersive Reader built in. And I will try and touch on that in a few minutes as well. So that's Immersive Reader. And this is where I think it's important, is that it brings in that empowerment, the support aspects. It makes content accessible without having to be redesigned. It's adaptive to the individual needs of the person using it. And of course, as we mentioned, it's integrated with all of the Office products as well. So that's why I think it's a really powerful tool to have in your toolkits. Okay, next up, this one we've only just started including actually. So this is Microsoft Translator. Similar kind of theme to what we've just talked about with Immersive Reader. And again, to help you overcome those language barriers in the classrooms or in day-to-day life, or where, I don't know, maybe you have reception staff, for instance, who are finding perhaps conflict situations, or where they've got language barriers with people coming into your schools, into your colleges. Well, Microsoft Translator tool could help with some of that to help you better understand one another. So again, a free tool. Again, in terms of the challenges that starts to face, it starts to address these situations where maybe we don't have translators on site. We don't have, we have our students maybe not English native speakers. They may be enrolled on an ESOL course, for instance, and sort of where we're sort of delivering lectures in different lessons. Sorry, it didn't quite fit everything onto that slide. It looks like in terms of my first speech bubble there, but where maybe you have lessons delivered or lectures delivered to people of different languages at the same time. So it could use its translate live into their own native language. And if you ever delivered a PowerPoint with maybe subtitling turned on, it uses the same process. So it uses that AI behind the scenes to understand language and to naturally translate it. So what I've done is I've put up a QR code for you on screen. There's also a link there on screen where you can go and find out more about this tool. We've used it very recently as well, just in our innovation side of things as an exploring the tool. And it allows you to record voice and translate it into text. You can also record voice and have it translated back into have it spoken back to you in a different language. So you see there we're going from United States English to German, for instance. In the middle screenshot, you can see it's detecting from a picture that we've taken from a certain language, so from French, I believe, sorry, in English to French, and you can see it's then translating the words on top of the picture into the foreign language. When you use it with something like PowerPoint, and this is PowerPoint online, you can deliver a lecture where students can sign up with a code and they can sit in the lecture theatre with their phones and they can see the transcript of everything you're saying live in their own native language. And so that's why this gets onto my list as a really cool tool to have in your kit bag. And one of the other ways you can use that is for things like parent-teacher conferences as well. So here's a quick video on that process as well. So there you go, quick highlight of Microsoft Translator. What do we think, folks? Does that sound like a useful tool in your own environments? Could you see a use for that, maybe with your engagement teams, or even sort of receptions or parents' evenings, perhaps? Hopefully, amongst a few of you. There we go. We've got a brilliant. That's always good to hear. So yeah, I think it's a really great addition, and again, another very much unknown, unrecognized tool. And I think it's about time we get these things out there and in use in our institutions. So the QR code on the top there, if you want to scan that, feel free to do that now or later on. But we'll share out all the links and resources with you again. So from a translator point of view, I would say that then starts to give us the option for use in live lectures, for maybe use in parents' evenings, in study groups where students are maybe again speaking amongst themselves. That's kind of one great thing there. And also don't forget travel as well. So if you have outreach teams, when we are moving back out of COVID and we are able to move a little bit more freely again, where you've got exchange students perhaps, or where you are going to foreign locations and language may be a bit of a barrier. Doesn't have to be. So you can use this tool with you when you go. Okay, right. Now, this is going to be my sort of biggest part of this. Now, hopefully, I haven't been boring you too much with PowerPoint as we go. PowerPoint clearly is one of those tools that has a bit of bad press, I think, and I'm hoping what you've seen so far shows how we can use PowerPoint in some quite rich ways to create much more engaging and powerful presentations. But I know that's not the viewpoint everyone's had. I think many of us have been using PowerPoint like it's 1997 still, and not necessarily paid attention to all those new features that are coming and have come into the products in the last few years, really. So challenges that PowerPoint obviously presents us are things like this: death by PowerPoint. That's probably one of the most common. People just simply don't like it. They use alternatives. There's Prezi, there's sort of slides and so on from Google. fair enough. That's okay. If you have your own platform you use, then fine. But if you're doing that on the basis that you think it's utter rubbish, maybe some of the things I'm about to show you will change your mind. Other challenges that you have are maybe presentations look a little bit tired, so they look a little bit rubbish, perhaps, not to sort of tarnish what you're doing too much. And I appreciate all teachers are under a lot of pressure. And that's where the time thing comes in. Maybe you don't have time to create all these rich, fancy, powerful presentations and resources. And actually, what's the benefit of it overall? Well, I think it's an engagement piece. And I think where students see that content has been produced with high quality and is of rich design, then it also helps portray kind of that message and helps people feel that they are willing to engage with it. And also makes it useful as a resource. You know, you are not going text heavy with things. You can go down the route of using pictures and images to represent things a lot more easily. We have got another PowerPoint session we run, and I'll cover that in a minute. So it might be worth coming along to or accessing some of our resources around that. But as I say, those are some of the challenges. I'm not going to go into too much detail about all the things here, but I will just give you some highlights. So first up is design ideas. If you're not using this already, you really, really should. This is a really quick way of making your PowerPoints look absolutely awesome. So literally start off from a blank page, you throw in a couple of pictures or a block of text, and you can see there on the right-hand side on my screen, it's instantly presenting back at least 7 or 8 options for how that slide could look. So a lot of what you see in my own presentation today has actually been created using design ideas. It saves me a lot of time because I can literally throw together a few images and it will sort out a lot of the design aspect for me. And really interesting that this was designed for partially sighted people to be able to use and create presentations themselves. So a blind person technically could use PowerPoint using the accessibility tools built in to create a presentation that to others looks actually pretty good. Big time saver, that one, and definitely worth having a look at. Really easy to access. You just simply, when you're on a new PowerPoint, you go to design on the toolbar across the top, and then design ideas will be a button within there that you press, and it will generate some ideas for you on your presentation. So worth trying, have a go, see what results you can come up with. And if nothing else, I really hope it does start driving this higher quality presentation piece as well. So I have got a video on this one, but I'm very conscious in terms of timing. I won't drag it out too sort of far with this, but we will share all the videos with you as well on design ideas. Definitely one to have a look at. As I say, it is a great time saver to have there. Okay, my next one, many of you will probably have found this kind of thing during lockdown, but what if you could lecture capture your presentations? So I suspect many of you have already done this, the pre-recorded content, and great, fantastic if you have. If you haven't found this already though, this is a really great tool to have for your own benefit. If you can record your session and record a lesson once and then play it back multiple times, you instantly save yourself a lot of time. And what this PowerPoint recorder allows you to do is to advance. You can see on the screen here, you've got a little bit like a presenter view on screen. You can see your presentation. You can see a video camera feed as well. So you can narrate your slides. And as you advance through next slide by next slide, you can make any annotations you want on screen and record your lesson. At the end of it, you can leave it as is and play it back as a normal PowerPoint, or you could export the whole thing as a video and make that available as a revision session, perhaps. So some really great things you can do with that. And it starts to open up some other really interesting ways of using PowerPoint, perhaps. I'm always drawn back to Jurassic Park in this case, and I always remember you've got John Hammond talking to himself on screen alongside his presentation. So you could create some quite fun, quite creative ways of delivering a session there, perhaps, if you pre-record your own script where you're effectively talking to yourself or you're talking to other characters on the screen. It could open up some interesting ways of delivering a session. So there's variants. There's the ability to record once and repeat, which is absolutely amazing and as a big time saver, which then also opens up the opportunity to use this for revision. And also means you can release the video after the live sessions. So you still encourage people to come along to your actual lessons. But this way, they can also access the resources afterwards as well. So that's your flipped classroom with PowerPoint. Again, how to do that, resources on how to do that are in the guide as well. Right, so to continue with our theme of hurting your head with lots of great stuff, what you'll see on screen now is a presentation I call Stellar Presentations. And this is starting to look at some of those other features in a PowerPoint that we can make use of. So the animation you're seeing is actually a real presentation designed in nothing other than PowerPoint. So everything you're seeing on there is pulled in as kind of PowerPoint slides. So the DVD menu is a thing called Zoom, and that allows you to zoom in and out of the presentation. I apologize if that's pausing a minute. It looks like we're hopefully not having too much by way of bandwidth issues. There we go. I think it's continuing again. So you can zoom into parts of your presentation. That's created using the Zoom tool and by sectioning off your PowerPoints. As you go through that, you'll see there's also some graphics around animated GIFs being used. So the planet is as an animated GIF on screen. The text effects are using the morph tool to move between slides and create some great effects there. The planets, again, all of these were pictures found on the web. I've removed the background using PowerPoint. I've resized them using PowerPoint. I've used the morph tool to then allow the planets to move and transition automatically within one slide. And that animation effect was done really easily by pressing one button. So I've not had to create any advanced animations for anything. And the morph tool is one that I would recommend you to have a look at. Again, we'll cover in our guides as well to give you some insights into how that all comes together. And then we've got some alternate uses for PowerPoint as well. So different ways you can use PowerPoint that you might not be familiar with. And this is about driving really high production values and really great quality content. So we've got things like posters. So all of the posters we design within the innovations team at the college are done in PowerPoint. It's the easiest way and quickest way for us to get them out there. And we can use tools and resources we already have, which is fantastic. And just to prove they're real, this is what they look like in real life when we printed them. So really high impact, really good quality things, and rapidly created as well. So I don't need to be a graphic designer. I don't need to understand Photoshop. I can just use a tool I'm familiar with already. And as if that wasn't enough, folks, something really cool that you can do with PowerPoint now. So this is a relatively new feature, and this is PowerPoint Coach. So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but it does allow you to create a rehearsal around your presentation, and it will give you advice as you go through it. So it will tell you when you're talking too quickly. It will tell you if you're talking too slowly. It will look at the tone in your voice, and maybe you're being a little bit monotonous, and it will give you advice on maybe raising the pitch or changing the tone a little bit as you talk. While it's doing all of that, it will check if you're using ums and ahs and give you some advice around that. And whether you're using any swear words or whether you're using sensitive phrases that perhaps you shouldn't do in your public presentations. So this is great for sort of new teachers in particular. It's really, really good for students who want to rehearse that confidence piece in their presentations. So PowerPoint Coach, the web version on Office 365 is a really good thing to have a look at. Again, we'll show out some resources with for you as well on that piece. And this just gives a quick look of what it looks like in an actual presentation sense. So you can see my report there for one of my quick presentations I've rehearsed, and it gives you an idea about the kind of things that it will show up there. So that's PowerPoint Coach. So to recap our part on PowerPoint, these are the things that I think we've covered off, hopefully. Better presentations, lecture capture, getting rid of this idea of death by PowerPoint and boring the heck out of people. We've got PowerPoint Coach, and then we've got the ability to use for things like posters and infographics as well. So some really great stuff there. As I say, if you do want to look at any extra CPD around this, then we've put together a how to not suck at PowerPoint session, usually really well subscribed. And so do check out our resources for that as well. Okay, next up, and I'm going to keep the pace going because I do want to make sure we can show you this in real life. Microsoft Sway is one of those tools that not a lot of people really know what to do with. It's not a new tool. It's been around for a few years now, but I look at it as it's a non-designer tool for creating resources effectively. Now, whether that's newsletters or handouts and guides, it could be a multitude of different things. But the key thing is it's for non-designers, so people who don't have lots of design skill, who want to throw together good-looking presentations or slides or resources really quickly. So the problems it solves are effectively things like, I want to create a newsletter, I don't know how, or they never display the way I expect them to if I send out an email. They get blocked by people's email accounts and email clients. They look a bit basic. What about time? Again, I don't have time to design rich content and rich resources. Again, I don't like PowerPoint. I want something different. So this presents an alternative. And also creating interactive lesson resources. So Sway can kind of accommodate all of those challenges that you're facing. And you can see the sort of video that's just about to play on here as well, just in the background to give you some idea about what a Sway might look like. And I do hope it plays out for you. But what this allows you to do is things like reducing print costs, because you're not having to print your guides out or your handouts anymore. You can create a digital version in Sway. Really good as revision aids, really good maybe as lesson plans as well, and good for recap and revision on lessons that students may have missed. But other great things with it, like with your OneNotes, are you can embed video into here as well. So you can create quite rich content with text and with linked YouTube videos, for instance. And if you want to, you can also embed a Microsoft form right at the end to help you capture that assessment piece and assignment piece as well. So it's really good and really rapid to create sways. And again, we're going to try and look at that quickly in the actual demo as well in the next few minutes. So in my head, I think Sway is all of these things. It's a newsletter, it's a lesson plan, it's a study guide or a handout, and it's a research aid. And it's again another drag and drop. Throw some pictures onto a page, throw some text onto a page, and let Sway do the design piece for you. The one bit of advice I would give you as a moderately capable designer, I think, is don't try and fight it. So if you are having a go at this and you're using the tool as a designer and you think I want to use a certain font and I want to use a certain layout, try to get out of that habit, because you'll find you spend more time fighting the tool than you get sort of productivity out of it. It's really, really good for those who just want to throw together a handout that looks good really quickly without all that design involvement. So a little bit of behavioral change from us to get the most out of it, but it is worth it. Very much so. It is a very good tool to have. Some extra CPD for that. We've got a Let's Sway session, which you might find useful, and we'll cover in more detail what we're about to go on to. Okay, so that's Sway. Next up, I'm just going to quickly mention Microsoft Forms. I'm sure you've all seen this by now and filled in a form or two through Microsoft. I'm not going to delve into it in too much detail, but what I am going to share with you are just some quick screenshots about the capabilities of Forms and the kind of things you can do with it. So it's obviously great for reviewing content, is really good at presenting information back to you. Really rapid to create forms and obviously to share them out and create vibrant looking forms that your students or parents or external parties can fill in, whether it's a poll or a survey or a quiz. What I have added to the slide for you though, and I'm not going to play this video because it is very long. This is a 25-minute video from Mike Tholfsen, who's the basically, I think he's the product lead from Microsoft, absolute hero of a guy in terms of Office 365. And he's put together 25 top tips on how you can use forms to the best of its ability. So do take a look at that video. Again, there's a QR code there for you. There's a YouTube video shared out with a link there. Have a look. That's got some great tips in there to help you get the most out of forms. And to show you some of that, just quickly what it looks like, this is a form with some responses on it to show you that quick information display. So I'm not having to design charts, it's just presenting charts back to me really easily. So I can look at the metrics and the data coming back. And the other one I want to share with you here is the creating a quiz. So this is allowing you to use forms to create a quiz for your lessons, where you can have multiple choice answers. You can flag the correct answers. You could even assign points to it as well. And if you've done all of this and you've assigned points, effectively the quiz can mark itself as well. So the great thing is you can throw together the quiz. In terms of marking it, you let forms do that. It will tell the student whether they got everything right or not. And obviously you'll be able to see who and how many of your students got the questions right in that quiz as well. So again, Mike covers lots of that in his video from the previous slide. And using quizzes in there is a great tool to have. Also, just to honorably mention as well, there's a resource here. Again, we'll share this out with you, but you can use it for creating complex maths equations and so on. So self-marking quizzes with maths equations built into them. What's really quite handy about this is you only need to know the correct answer. You write in the sort of various, you only need to give sort of one alternative in terms of a formula, and then Microsoft will automatically create, say, 4 or 5 alternative answers that will obviously be wrong. That write the kind of formulaic equation out as well for you, so you don't need to think up how to get the maths wrong. It will do all that bit for you as well. So again, really rapid way of getting that kind of content out there. Right, I've talked to you folks for a very long time, and I hope what you found we've talked through so far has given you some insights and has been useful. What I'd like to do now, before we kind of close and open to any Q&A, and hopefully we don't extend too far beyond what we've gone through, is just to show you some stuff, show you how it all works, and then open up to any questions and answers. And I think we'll hang around a little bit afterwards as well if anyone does have time to continue any questions you might have. So I'm going to stop talking about this and I'm going to show you what I've got on screen. So if I share out my desktop screen with you. So hopefully you can see a Word document in front of you. So this is Word online through Office 365. And I just wanted to show you some of these kind of quick access things, try and put together some of what we've just covered today very, very briefly. So I've got a Word document from a presentation I've done before. I've put some information in there. I've given some guides around, how to use Word better, the kind of things you could do within it. There's some imagery. I have used, and this is quite important, folks, as well, is I'm using the headings for my text. So I'm using heading 1. If we look at maybe in our sort of fonts and designs aspect, we've got all of our fonts. That's absolutely fine. In terms of our layouts, though, sorry, bear with me, just make sure I get the right elements of this. While I'm editing something, there we go, styles. So if I make sure I'm using the heading 1, 2, and 3 and normal text, what this will do is show the help us when we come to convert into a sway or do anything else with it, or help anyone accessing the document through Immersive Reader, for instance. So here's my document. I've got lots of great stuff in there. I've got some pictures I've taken from feedback. I'm using things like the smart art, for instance, within Word. So I'm getting some advantages of using sort of bullet pointed lists, but in a nice, easy to display style. So there's a document that could be a bit difficult to read for anyone with difficulties, learning difficulties, or have difficulties accessing content on screen. So we talked about Immersive Reader. If I go to View now at the top, and I come into Immersive Reader. So let's say, for instance, I created this document, I handed it out to my students. They've now got access to that in full. They can see the document here, and what it's done is it's split down everything that we've gone through on that. So I know some of you had seen Immersive Reader already. And for those of you who haven't yet seen it, these are the kind of things you can do with it. So you've got your text preferences where you can increase or decrease the size of the text on screen. You can increase or decrease the spacing between lettering. You can also then change the fonts between some of them. I'm disappointed. I think also that Comic Sans is featuring in there, but I think it is useful in some scenarios. I would love to see Microsoft put in there, for instance, the Open Dyslexia font would be a really good one to see, or maybe something like Sans Helvetica. But there's some easy ways to break it down into much easier to read content on screen. Then from a dyslexia point of view, obviously in terms of making it easier to read, the students themselves with this content can convert it into a background of text. So we remove that need to print on yellow paper or pink paper, for instance. If I move over to grammar options, this is where I can do some great things, and this is great for younger years and early learners and those who struggle with sort of construct or language constructs or written words. I can split out the syllables between wording. I can turn on or off the nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and of course color code them accordingly as well, so it will show exactly what they are. And I can show the labels next to them as well to help people understand, you know, what is considered a noun, what is considered a verb in there. So that's pretty smart. If I turn that off for a moment. Now, some other things to make it easier to use again are in the reading preferences part here. So where you have learners who, or anyone who gets distracted by content, lots of content on screen, you can use line focus to really hone that down into much easier to read content, and then use the up and down arrows over here to move through line by line and read the content. You can also do that then by sentence or a few lines at a time, or you can do it by multiple lines or whole paragraphs at a time if you prefer. So again, it makes it much easier to read through your documents and keep focus on the bits that are important to you. Also in here, you may have seen we've got Picture Dictionary. So what that does is allows you to click over a word, any word on screen, and it will give you a picture representation of it. It will also allow you to listen to the word spoken by clicking on the little icon there. And if you've set an alternate language on here, then it will also translate it for you and show you in wording what the translation would look like, and then also give you a voice of the translation as well. So that's your Picture Dictionary. You can see here I've got my translation tools as well. So where we talked earlier on about that, having to create resources for different languages, I don't think you should have to do that anymore. You can translate into one of 60 different languages in here, including Chinese as well. I couldn't begin to tell you how to interpret that and understand, but I'm sure obviously those who are native speakers can. And then you can change into various English languages as well with different dialects. And you have the option to translate by word, which is a very literal translation, or by document, which uses AI to then translate into a much more human-friendly sort of expression then, or view of it. So there we go. We can see that now it's translated everything into a different language. And if I remove the focus, just so you can see the whole document, and maybe remove the line coloring, or you can see there the translation in full. Even better is I can jump between the original and the translated language, and I can have it spoken to me as well. And I'm sure you'll agree that's quite natural in terms of that language. It doesn't sound robotic. It doesn't sound, you know, sort of difficult to understand. It's very natural, very easy to understand human language in there. And that's really good. And obviously I can play it back in my original language in here as well. So I can choose there to have it play back as an original and play that back through there. So that's Immersive Reader. It is a very, very powerful resource to have, very useful tool. Okay, so while we're still in the document, and while I've still got a couple of minutes of your time, the other things I'm going to do here, I'm going to take this document and I'm going to add in some extra content because I think that's quite, I want to add some more to it. So before I convert it into something else, just to show you a few of these extra features you can now use, we've now got Dictate in here as well. So I can use the voice to text features of Word, and I can basically dictate out to the document and have it interpret that and translate it and put it back into my document again. And you can see there as I'm talking through, hopefully that is pretty accurate in terms of the way it's picking up what I'm saying. And I think that's really important to see. So this makes it really easy for you to draft documents or to use speech to text, where historically, from a senior leadership team, maybe you had a secretary to do this, or you spent ages typing. It's also good for those who do have mobility difficulties as well, and typing that allows people to engage with the content directly. So there we go. We've got dictation tools built in, which is really useful. So I'm going to turn that off. The next one I want to show you is about reusing content from other places. So here we have reuse files. And this is a very new feature in the online version. And what this is going to do is, because I've stored all my documents in OneDrive, and that's why that's really important, is I can use the search to find content from across my OneDrive. So let's take the presentation I've worked on today, for instance. And it allows me to go through and actually embed the slides straight into my document that I'm writing. So I can pick out key slides that we've gone through today, and it will add those as pictures into my Word document. So that's pretty useful, and it doesn't just work with presentations, it works with other documents. So you can link content from big reports, all those kind of things as well. So that's a nice new feature. And then finally, before we do an export in here, the editor tool is a very useful one for you and your students as well. And what the editor tool will do is, as long as there's over 100 words in your document, it will go through your document and start analyzing it and start understanding how you've written it, and does it fit with a certain level of use perhaps. So it's looking at spelling, it's looking at grammar, it's looking at my use of things like acronyms and formality. Am I aiming this at the right level, for instance, when I'm writing this document? Also, for those who have used Turnitin and those kind of tools, this is where you can check your resources to start off with by clicking on the similarity checker, and it will go away to the web to lots of different resources and just see if the content has been used elsewhere. So that's quite a useful feature to have, and it's a great one for students to be able to validate themselves that they're not using resources that have been copied elsewhere. Or also, you, when you're marking their work as well, you can check that they haven't just copied Wikipedia. And then there's additional stats you can gain about this document as well. But it's really good to have that extra review of kind of how well your content is written. So when we're happy with that, we've got our Word document. I could print it, sure. I could share it, so it stays in my OneDrive and give it out to people. But we talked earlier about Sway. And this is where I could take this document and turn it into a Sway really easily without all that extra design hassle. So if I got to File and I go to Export, you see you've got this option called Transform to a Web Page. So if I click that, give it a few seconds, and then you'll get this prompt of how to, of kind of different styles you could use within Sway. So here I can look through loads of pre-built styles. Let's pick one that I think looks quite nice. So Fluent, and hit Transform. And then hopefully within about 30 seconds to a minute, I will have created a Sway guide that I can hand out as a digital resource. And there we go. So no design necessary, is use the headings that I created in my document to create these headings. So that's why that's important. It's going to bring in my pictures as it goes through. You can see again all the headings, the various pictures that should be coming through shortly, and so on and so on. as I say, this session isn't to go through how Sway works, but it's just to show you how quickly you can start bringing things together into different formats. So I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm going to come back and just offer out to any of you guys, if you do have any questions at all, then please feel free to ask away. I'm just going to go back to my presentation a second and bring up the last slide. For those of you who do want to claim any of our MEC points for the session as well, you'll be able to do that with the slide I just bring up, and also the QR codes that I'll share with you as well to be able to access any of our extra resources. So I'm going to do that in the background for just a second, and I'm just going to ask if anyone has any questions at all they'd like to ask at this stage. And if not, thank you very much for coming along today. I really hope you found what we've gone through useful.